Hey everyone, my name is Vince Gelman. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have you ever had someone say to you, you need to forgive that person? Have you ever read a self-help book that had a message that implied that it was important to forgive as soon as possible? I have a different take on things. I think it's important when we embark on the journey of forgiveness that we take our sweet time, and that when we take our sweet time, that is an act of self-care. It is an act of self-love. It is an act of self-care and self-love to not rush to forgiveness, because if we rush to forgiveness is not going to be grounded in the body, and it's not going to be centered in the heart. It's going to be a virtuous thought, and it's not going to be based in an emotional resolution or trauma resolution. It's not going to be based in a clearing of what was in our body so that forgiveness can land safe and sound and real and true in our heart. So, in other words, when people rush to forgiveness, or when people forgive too quickly, what can happen is that they can override the very real feelings in their body that have yet to be processed. They may override the anger. They may override the resentment. They may override the grief, the fear that's still in them from what happened. And maybe what happened was sexual abuse when they were children, or neglect, or whatever it might be. They may override those imprints in the body in an attempt to be to forgive now. So they push themselves to forgiveness, and what happens when that happens? It's almost like we are, in terms of childhood trauma, it's like we are denying our inner child's feelings because the adult self wants to get to forgiveness now. So let's get to forgiveness now, but I'm going to override or bypass or skip over what my inner child is still carrying, which is grief or anger or rage or whatever it might be. I'm going to override that because I think it's important to forgive now. So in my practice as a healer, I have worked with clients who have said to me, yeah, I forgive my parents. I forgive my parents. Yeah, I've let that go. I've moved on. I'm now, golf trips with dad, dinners with mom, everything's okay. But once my clients start to go in their body, and this was when I was a somatic therapist. I was a registered somatic therapist. I had a full practice. I closed that down. I now do online healing and activation work, online healing and activation ceremonies. But when I was doing that work, once we started going into the body, once my clients started going into their feelings and their emotions, they started uncovering things, including memories, they started realizing, holy smokes, maybe I'm carrying a lot more than I thought. I thought I let that go. I thought I had forgiven my dad. I thought I'd forgiven my mom. No, you haven't. See, what happens is often what we do is we forgive so that we don't have to feel. We forgive at a superficial level so that we don't have to feel. If I can just forgive them, then I can move on. If I move on, I don't have to feel. I don't have to deal with my shadows. So forgiveness can be a form of what we call spiritual bypassing, which is not the best term, but what it means is bypassing our body, avoiding our feeling terrain, avoiding our history, avoiding the truth. So forgiveness can be a way to avoid if it's not authentic. It needs to be authentic. And for it to be authentic, it often, if not always, needs time. It needs time. So I was abused as a child, and I was abused by different people. And these memories started surfacing once I started working with psychedelics. And I was shocked because I didn't have any idea until I was well into my adult years that these things actually happened. And so I had to go through my own journey of forgiveness. And by the time I found out, I was actually I was somewhat trained and somewhat experienced as a professional healer. And I'd done a lot of work on myself, so I was pretty literate when it came to emotional intelligence and what it took to heal. So instead of just rushing to forgiveness, I was wise enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to forgive them now. But I'm not also going to the place of I'm never going to forgive them. So here's what I did, and this is what I recommend, is that you set the intention to forgive. That's what I did. I set the intention to forgive, and I gave myself permission to take my sweet time to forgive. And I then went through the different processes, the different stages needed in my emotional body in order to clear, to make room for forgiveness to land naturally and fully in my cells, in my heart, and also in my mind, on all levels. And so that meant feeling anger, that meant feeling grief, that meant seeking professional support to help it move through my body, to help the trauma and the emotions move through my body. And I took my sweet time. That's so important. We take our sweet time. That's me loving me. That's me loving my inner child. That's me saying to my inner child, you know what? I hear you. I hear you still are angry. I hear you're still sad. And you have very good reason to feel that. And I'm not going to jump to forgiveness and basically ignore your reality. I'm going to take my sweet time, which is our sweet time. And that's my way of loving you, inner child. That's my way of loving me. And so I set an intention. That's what I did. I set the intention to forgive. And then I did the work in my body. I did the work. And then something miraculous happened. Wonderful happened. I remember I was walking along, I think I was walking along a beach, and suddenly it was like forgiveness chose me. It came out of nowhere. It was very spontaneous. And it was, I think, about 6 months after I made the decision to set the intention. And I'd done a lot of work on myself. I'd shed a lot of tears. And I'm walking along, and suddenly it was like, I forgive. I forgive. It was done. It was done. It was pure. It was real. It was embodied. It was embodied. It was not like, it was almost like I didn't choose it, but it chose me. It chose me. It was like, you're ready now. And so now it is going to be graced upon you. It's coming to you. And that is when I was done. I could let that go in full now. So that's a very different approach to saying, I need to forgive right now. Boy, that's a formula for a whole bunch of spiritual bypassing, which really is another way of saying of lying to myself. Right? We live in a disembodied world, and we live in a world that wants quick fixes. We live in a world that wants quick fixes, and in a world full of people that don't want to feel, that don't want to do the work. And it's very easy to read these self-help books and to think that we can move through a very sacred process like forgiveness by working it out with our mind. Now, I want to say this because this is important. I'm not saying that no one can forgive really quickly. Anything is possible, but I just feel for many people, if not most people, sweet time is needed. Sweet self-love time, self-care time. Time with your inner child. Time listening to your body. Time feeling what needs to be felt. Because the thing is, if you go through that process yourself, if you move through the process of grief work, of moving through your anger and feeling your anger in a healthy and a responsible way, this really adds to your level of spiritual maturity. It adds to your level of inner resourcefulness, your ability to give to others when they're in a similar position that you have been. So what I'm saying is that if you can go through that process of taking your sweet time, then you are more resourced, more capable of going up to someone else who is in a similar situation and saying to them, you know what? Take your sweet time. Here's what I've learned. Take your time. So now you are encouraging them to honor themselves, honor their process, practice self-care, practice self-love. You're not encouraging spiritual bypassing. You're not saying, hey man, you need to forgive. Someone that says, hey, you need to forgive, chances are they're saying that because that's their formula. And there's a good chance they haven't fully forgiven yet, but they've convinced themselves that they have, so that they don't have to do the work. They don't have to feel. They don't have to go into the body. They don't have to go into the mystery and the shadows of the body, which can be scary ground for so many people who are not used to going in the body. So if you work through forgiveness this way, if you take your sweet time and practice self-love in this way, then you have more love to give to other people who are also in a position where they now want to forgive or are considering forgiveness. You can say to them, hey, take your time. Take your time. That is love. So the practice I give to you is to set the intention, to say my intention is to forgive, but I'm going to allow it to unfold as it should. And if that takes 5 years, great. If that takes 5 years, great. If that takes 2 months, wonderful. But I'm not going to rush through that. I'm not going to rush my inner child. I'm not going to rush my heart. I'm not going to rush my bones. I'm not going to rush my cells. I'm not going to rush my musculature where trauma is held. I'm going to move through it gracefully. I'm going to honor myself and love myself. And now, by doing this, I have more love for others. So thanks, everyone. Thank you for listening. As always, I have online healing and activation ceremonies to support you with your journey of healing and empowerment. And I'll put a link in the description. And if you enjoy this video, please share, please like, comment, subscribe, click notifications, all that jazz. And take good care of yourselves. Thank you. Bye.